The world is being overran by creatures, monsters, and all kind of fiendish things. It is our job as heroes to eradicate them all with one deck. Welcome to the Game Cave, where the adventure starts right here at the table. And today's game is none other than One Deck Dungeon. That's right, one deck in this whole box, but it's filled with adventure potential. That's right. So what we are going to do in this game right here, in One Deck Dungeon, we'll be taking our heroes, adventuring through a dungeon, entering doors, fighting creatures until we eventually get to the boss. And I think there's 5 bosses in this box, but we will defeat the boss and consider ourselves a hero. But before we get to that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like us, go over to our Twitch channel. There'll be a link somewhere here, and follow us on Twitch, where we stream Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So let's get to the table and learn how to play One Deck Dungeon. The first thing I want to do is draw the attention to the size of this box. Man, it is tiny, but there is a lot of good stuff inside of here. So we've got our rule book, we've got our dice, we've got our tokens, we've got our cards. What else we got in this box here? We've got a turn reference card. We've got our heroes we can choose from, and then they gave us this nice little pad to keep track of some of our accomplishments on. I'll stick everything here to the side, and we're going to do a basic setup for the game. The setup's pretty simple to learn, just like the game itself. We're going to look through the cards here. We have our encounter cards, which are indicated with the door. Picture of the door on the back end of them. We have our stairs. We have dungeon cards we can choose from. And then we have our levels and levels. Just an easy way to keep track of what level your hero is. So let's go ahead and do our basic setup here. So we're going to set our skill cards in order from level 1 to level 4. And we'll just stack them up here, and then we'll set them over here to the side somewhere. Probably over here. I'm going to show you the way I set the game up here. We have our turn reference card here. We'll be referring to that throughout the game. We need to select a dungeon now, so let's go ahead and select a dungeon. Now you're going to notice here on the dungeon card at the right of the dungeon cave scroll to the top, there's a dot. There's a dot from 1 to 3 indicating the level of dungeon, 1 being the easiest, 3 being the most difficult. And then all we got to do, we're actually going to select the Dragon Cave, by the way, for our dungeon to explore. We got our adventure cards now. And I say adventure cards, but they're encounter cards, basically. We're going to stick them on top of the stairway. And I'll explain that in more detail here in just a few minutes. But for now, let's go ahead and choose a hero. And for this example setup, I am going to be using the warrior. And take that dungeon card that we selected earlier, the Dragon Cave, and slide it under the turn reference card, leaving exposed floor number 1 at the top. Now I'm going to show you real quick the Dragon Cave card again. There is a little bit of information we need to keep in mind on each round or each turn. And that is the very first section of floor 1 where it says Hall of Statues. It says spend an extra 5 time before the first turn on each floor. This is going to need to be done as it states on the card, and we'll explain that in a little more detail too. But for now, let's go ahead and look. Well, let's go ahead and set everything up here. Let's get things a little bit more organized here. And now I'm doing this upside down, obviously, so it's looking a little weird to me now the way I normally set it up. I think it's opposite the way I do it. We're going to set this encounter deck here to the top. We just need enough room to where we can put out 4 cards on the table. It's a pretty small, just like the box, it's a pretty small setup. We're going to go ahead and empty out our dice and then our tokens to make a general pool to grab the things we need from. We're going to go ahead and grab one of these white tokens here, one of these little white boxes, and put in our potion area. This indicates that we have 1 potion to start the game off with. Let's go ahead and take a look at our warrior card. There's some information on this card that we need to know. Starting at the left top right is our items. Notice there are 11 sword symbols, 2 pink boots, a magic symbol, and 6 hearts. This indicates the number and color of dice we're able to use throughout the game. Now, this is what the warrior starts with. So, to set it up, all we need to do is find, not 11, but 4 yellow dice. And this is our attack or strength. And I like to just keep them on the card for my pool. My dice pool is usually on the card. We're going to get 2 pink dice for the agility, 1 blue for mana, and then I like to stack my hearts on the card and remove them as I take damage. The next bit of information we are going to look at is the heroic feat. The heroic feat allows heroes to roll heroic dice, the black dice, which can be turned into any color of dice they wish. Now, this is basically a wild dice. At the bottom right-hand corner of this scroll, it also tells you when you can use the heroic feat. There are the symbols with the sword and then the bear trap, which is the peril cards. Notice that the skull with the cross through it means you cannot use this during boss battles. The last bit is the hero's skill, the second wind skill. I'm going to circle the symbol here because this indicates that it really doesn't require a prerequisite to use this. It can be used at any time. Each hero has their own little unique ability for the heroic feats, and they each have their own unique skill. So when choosing your hero, choose to your play style. Let's go ahead and look at the turn reference card. This is where all the important information lies. Remember earlier when I said the Dragon Cave you had to spend 5 time? Well, here is where this really comes into play. This symbol here, the hourglass, represents time. That is how we keep track of time in the game. So there's no turns in the game, but there is time. And time basically means you're going to discard cards from your main deck, meaning you've only got a certain amount of time before you reach the boss. The turn reference card states that at the start of each turn, spend 2 time, then either explore the room or enter a room. So, at the beginning of each turn, you're going to discard 2 cards. So we're going to go ahead and discard 5 cards to start off with because our Dragon Cave states we have to give up 5 time at the beginning of each level. Or floor, I should say floor. Then, according to our turn reference card, we must discard 2 more cards and then explore or enter a room. So let's go ahead and discard 2 more cards to explore. And explore means that we are going to draw and add face down doors to the dungeon until there are 4 total doors in play. Just a quick note that you can explore at any time as long as you have 1 empty slot available to lay down a card. All right, now that we have finished that turn by exploring the dungeon, we move to our next turn. Starting back at the turn reference card at the very top, we have to spend 2 more time. And we discard 2 cards. And then we can now enter the room. We can either open, if the door's open, we can counter it. If it's closed, then we just turn the card over like this. And we can either encounter it or flee. And I think we're going to go ahead and encounter it. Let's go ahead and talk about encountering versus flee real quick. So if we encounter it, we're entering the room, and we're going to take our dice pool, roll it, and try to cover up these boxes with the collar and numbers in it. If we flee, you basically just leave the room and end your turn. So there's some information on this card that we need to go over. And the information on this card is quite important. Notice at the top left-hand corner, though, there's a combat symbol above the picture. This will also be referred to a reference to on the Dragon Cave card. This is a combat symbol. And there's a box on the Dragon Cave that must be covered up along with the stuff on the card itself. On the card, we have things we can collect for our hero. So let's go ahead and start to the left of the card. That is our item slot. It's just like the one on the hero slot. This will represent that we can collect 1 blue mana dice if we choose this part of the card. The second part is the XP. Each card has an XP amount. Each one of those little symbols reference 1 XP. And if you remember from our skill card, we would need X amount of XP to level up. This would give us 3 of those XP. And lastly, each one of them has a skill that you can collect for your hero. Each skill is different, and each skill has a prerequisite most of the time to use that skill. Now the bad stuff on these cards is inside the little collared boxes. You're going to see time and hearts inside these boxes. These are the consequences that you will suffer if you cannot place dice on these boxes. And sometimes you may not want to put dice, or you're unable to put dice in these boxes. So you will suffer those consequences. So, for an example, if you cannot put a yellow dice on that 6, you would lose 1 time and 1 health. So let's go ahead and cover how to cover or what to cover when you roll your dice for this particular card. So the first thing we're going to look at is the ability of the creature itself, and it is split. This must be resolved before placing any dice. So it says spend 1 time for each one rolled. The next thing you're going to want to look at is the dice itself. So whenever you roll dice, you're going to be placing dice in these boxes. A small box, like is shown right here, just means you can only place 1 dice. The shield symbol means that you have to place those dice before placing any other dice. You're just basically matching the numbers and the collars. Now the numbers can exceed as long as you have a 2 plus or 3 plus, 4 plus, and so on and so on. There'll be another example I will show you with a peril card, which is indicated with the bear trap symbol that has longer boxes in it. And the longer boxes, you can use as many dice as you need to succeed the capturing of the card. Now, I think I stated before, but this pool is referred to as our dice pool. So we're going to basically, we decided to encounter the card. So we're going to roll the dice, and then we are going to figure out how to place these dice within the card to try to cover up all of the boxes so we don't suffer any type of consequences. Now, I got a 5-6-2, a 2-5-5 in various different colors, and another 5, but I don't think, yep. So we got to refer to our Dragon Cave card, and you'll notice since the symbol is a combat symbol that we discussed earlier, right here, I have to at least fill this box up, and it is a yellow 3, and the consequence is a heart. So if I can't fill that up, I will lose 1 health. Luckily for me, I've got 4 yellow dice in this particular scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 5 here. And then I'm going to try to divide up the other dice within the boxes here. So just a quick note with dice, you can exchange 2 dice of any color for a black dice with the lowest value. So if you have a 2 and a 5, you would get a 2 black dice. A black 2, I'm sorry. So we're going to fill up that 2 spot there, and you can notice here that we got very few options that we could do here. Now, we would still get this card if we can't fill those boxes up, but we would suffer every consequence in the boxes that are not filled. So, knowing what was being flipped over there at the very beginning, we probably would have fleed this glooping ooze and moved on and seen if we can fight something a little more easier. There's 3 mana, and we only have 1 mana dice, so it's going to be really hard for us to capture this creature in this scenario. So we would suffer those consequences. So we're going to pretend like we didn't roll, and we're just going to flee the area. And by fleeing, we lose our turn, and we must start at the beginning of the turn reference card again. And we discard 2 cards to represent 2 time. And now we can select another card. Now, I have selected this door here, and we have a peril. This is the second type of card within the deck. This is basically a trap or some kind of a puzzle we've got to try to get out of. Notice that the area around the peril card is exactly the same as the combat cards, where we can get rewards for collecting this card. But notice the big boxes here. The big boxes mean, I think I already said, that you can put as many dice in there as you would like to fulfill that number. It can only be that color, and you can only roll that color. Also notice at the very top one there, it says disarm them. There's 3 time symbols. That means you must, if you choose that box, you must give up 3 time in order to fill that box. For demonstration purposes, let's just go ahead and roll and just try to capture this peril here. We can only roll the blue dice. I have to be next to perfect, and I got a 6, so that is a perfect roll. So I would get to collect this card. Now I have to discard 1 to satisfy the top portion of that card. It says I have to sacrifice 1 time, and then I get to select this card. Now keep in mind that I did not satisfy the Dragon Cave prerequisite, which is the 2 shield. But for demonstrations, we're just going to show you what we can do here. So we can put this card here underneath the warrior card as one of the items, and that would give us 1 mana. We could also place the card underneath the warrior at the bottom, and that would give her another skill. And we could put the XP facing outward on the skill card to indicate that we have 2 XP, and we would only need now 4 to get to level 2. That's pretty much how every round will go. You're going to refer to your turn reference card, and each round you're going to give up 2 time, or I'm sorry, each turn you're going to give up 2 time, and so on and so on. So let's just say real quick we accomplished that first round, and we explored, we entered a room, we encountered, we successfully got the encounter without any consequences. Now on our next turn we would spend 2 more time, and then we could explore another room, which we could put down another card. Now we could have also entered another room. Once all the rooms have been entered and you're emptied, you can explore and put down 4 new cards. It's that simple. And that's literally how every round will go. That is until you get to the bottom of the deck, which you're going to reveal the stairwell. Once you get to the stairwell, this pretty much indicates that you will choose to descend into the next floor. There's a few rules that apply to this card. Once you reach this card here, you can instantly on your next turn go down, or you can continue to fight or encounter creatures that are behind the doors. Keep in mind that if you take any kind of time consequence, you will take that in health. So for each, on a 1 to 2 player game, I believe it's for each time you must put a heart on the stairwell, and if you reach 3, then you will take one of those as health, or as one of those as damage, I'm sorry, and then you would put the other 2 back into the general pool. Once you decide to descend, you're just going to shuffle your deck, put it back on top, move your Dragon Cave or your Dungeon Cave card to floor 2, so it's revealed, and now you must fill out all the consequences, or all the boxes that are revealed from here on out. Notice here that we revealed a 5 with 2 hearts in it. So now any combats, we now have to fill the 3 and the 5, and all the perils we have to do a 6 and a 2 of any color. This is repeated 3 times, and then on the 3rd, actually going into the 4th one, you will face the big bad dragon. There are some rules you will need to go over in the rule book about facing your nemesis, the dragon, but we'll go over that when we play the game. We're going to do a playthrough. We'll do a quick game, so some of these rules are a little more clear for you. And until next time, guys, man, this was fun. And that's One Deck Dungeon. Pretty simple little game to play. If you liked what you saw here today, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and also leave a comment below if there's games that you would like to see played, or see how games are played. Until then, though, adventurers, be well.